All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had a good lunch. It is my pleasure to introduce Claire Bergkamp. Claire is the head of sustainability and innovation at the fashion brand Stella McCartney, which some of you may know. She has spearheaded some of the most innovative and daring collaborations between biotech and fashion industries. This year, Claire, the folks at PETA and Stray Dog Capital, took a leap with BDC to explore the future of wool. So we're very excited to have you here with us, Claire. Welcome. If you would like a roaming mic as well.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. This is our first year working with the Biodesign Challenge, and I have to say it's been incredibly inspiring to see the work that's coming out of it. I think it's incredible to see how fashion universities and so many different fashion universities and design programs are embracing the concept of biotech and material innovation, things that are very near and dear to us at Stella McCartney. So I'm sure that most of you know Stella. We are a luxury fashion brand, but we are a luxury fashion brand with a twist in that we don't use any leather, fur, skins, feathers in any of our products. This is something that now I think people know us for and are very well aware of, but when Stella founded the business in 2001, it was something that people pretty genuinely thought that she'd kind of lost her mind, I think. She, from the very beginning, from day one, made the decision to create a fashion house with her values at the core of it, something that is very unique, very unusual within the luxury fashion context. So the majority of luxury fashion brands out there make their profits on leather goods, on small leather goods, on leather handbags. And so for Stella to come out and say that she was going to build a fashion brand, a fashion house without the use of leather was truly daring. But she's proven over the years that it is possible to have a successful luxury fashion business, to create products that are fit for today, that are both beautiful, sustainable, and cruelty-free. So it's my great pleasure to work for Stella. As Allison said, I head up sustainability and innovation for the brand. I've been at the company for about 6.5 years. I really don't think there's anywhere in the world better to do this type of work. Innovation, sustainability, animal welfare, human rights, these are core tenets of how we run our business. They're not afterthoughts for us at Stella. It is really and truly, it's one of the lenses that we use to consider every business decision we make, small or big. And we really do believe that there is a possibility for a fashion industry, a luxury fashion industry, a high street, any type of fashion that doesn't have to cause the planet the amount of harm that we have been over the past decades. So one of the things that we're always thinking about is how can we change things? What does the next wave of the fashion industry look like? I mean, what we know now is that the fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries in the world, that to create the products that we love, we use a huge amount of resource. We're using a huge amount of water, a huge amount of chemicals, inputs that are not sustainable nor particularly friendly to the planet, animals, or people. So what we've been looking at over the years at Stella is trying to reconsider what it takes to actually build a product. And for us, that's looking all the way through our value chains, all the way through our supply chains, taking into consideration where those inputs come from and trying to think about how can we disrupt what existed and build completely new systems so that we can have products that are less damaging. So basically the way we do this is that we have a lot of different materials that we use. I think that's one of the reasons that fashion has the impact that it does, is that within the industry we're relying on a huge, huge variety of raw materials. When you're thinking about plastic, or water bottles, some of these other industries out there, they're really looking at one or two primary material inputs. Within fashion, we're thinking about such a wide range of different materials. Think about even something like viscose. Viscose is a cellular material. It starts its life as a tree, but to turn a tree into a dress or into trousers like the ones I'm wearing, it takes a huge amount of steps and a huge amount of inputs to make that transformation. That's just one fiber. We're talking about so many different types of fibers, metals, plastics, really, you name it, it's in fashion. The fashion industry touches every single corner of the planet. in a way that is kind of unique. And then also what I find unique about it is that it is something that we interact with on a truly daily basis. There is, well, at least for most people, everyone in this room might imagine, there's not a day where you don't put some type of clothing on. It is something that is truly a part of our life, and I think that has a huge amount of power, and with that power, there is an opportunity to really help us reconsider the impact we have on the planet. So what we're aiming to do at Stella is to build traceable, sustainable, circular, and cruelty-free products. What that means, well, it means a lot of different things, but I think the traceable piece is, a little bit self-explanatory to some degree, but it's remarkable how difficult it is to build a traceable product in the fashion supply chains. What we've been working on at Stella is thinking about all the way back, the furthest piece of our supply chain. How do we understand what that is, and how do we start there to build a product all the way through? So right now at Stella, for us, we have traceability to the raw material for some of our key materials, but we don't have it for everything. I don't think any fashion brand of scale could say that they're able to tell you the farm, the forest, the field, the mine that their product started at all the way through for their entire collection. When we look at our material impact as a business, the vast majority of our impact is associated with the raw material stage. Every year, we do something called an environmental profit and loss at Stella. It was a metric system developed by the Caring Group. The EPNL, the environmental profit and loss, is a way of assigning natural capital to impact. So what that means simply is that we look at our impacts and we assign a value to them based on the externalities of those impacts. So if we're talking about cotton, instead of just looking at the price of cotton, we also try and value the water impact, the water pollution, air pollution, biodiversity loss, land use for any material. And we build out a profit and loss statement at the end of the year that tells us roughly where our biggest impacts are regionally across the entire world. And when using the EPNL, what we've learned is that about 65% of our impact is associated at the raw material stage. So that's the very furthest back in our supply chain, the farm, the field, the forest. So that's why we're so focused on building these traceable supply chains, because we really don't believe that we can claim to be a responsible or sustainable brand unless we have that visibility back to the raw material and are able to work on every single stage of the production. There's a lot of buzz right now in the industry around transparency, around traceability, which I believe is necessary. I do believe that it is necessary for fashion brands to become more transparent, to be more honest about the production that we have in the industry. But I think what traceable and transparent means is not only talking about the factories that you work in, but really looking at your entire value chain, your entire production supply chain, and understanding every single step, what can we do to minimize the impact? Going back to viscose, if it's viscose, how do we ensure that the trees that go into our fabrics are free from ancient and endangered forests, are coming from sustainably managed forest, that the viscose production process, where the pulp is actually turned into a fiber, is done in a chemically sustainable way using circular systems, chemical reclamation, so we're not having water pollution. If you're thinking about cotton, how can we have cotton farms that are free from the amount of pesticides and insecticides that conventional cotton uses? Conventional cotton today is one of the most polluting crops on the planet. Conventional cotton occupies around 2.5% of all agricultural land globally, but uses around 25% of insecticides globally. So if you think about that, you're talking about a very intense ratio of the amount of chemicals it's used to grow something like cotton. We also know that cotton's incredibly water intensive. So it's thinking about, at that farm stage, at that very, very far away stage, how do we change those impacts and look for opportunities to create positive, restorative change at the raw material level, so that we can actually make products that we can stand behind and say that these products truly are traceable and responsibly made. For us, another area that we've been thinking about a lot as of late is the concept of circularity, which I'm sure everyone here is familiar with. But what the fashion industry doesn't know, which probably no industry really knows, is how do we take the concept of the circular economy and apply it to our business models? How do we have a system shift so that we are able to finally think of waste as a new resource and a way to eliminate the amount of new resource that we require all the time to create fashion products. So we have a partnership with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in London. Yeah, we love them. And I was actually with them the past 2 days. We've just kicked off the work there around their initiative, Make Fashion Circular, which is really looking at how do we continue to have a vibrant fashion industry with many different types of brands out there, but that does not use the amount of material that it does right now. According to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's report, the track that we're on right now in the industry, by 2050, the fashion industry will be using 25% of the entire world's carbon budget, which is insane. There is absolutely no excuse for that. And at the same time, we've also learned through the research that they've done that right now only 1% of textiles are recycled back into textiles, which I think is extremely shameful as someone who's part of the industry. We are not dealing with our own waste. We are not really managing our own impacts across this industry. And we can blame things like a lack of technology, which is partially to blame, but at the same time, the industry really does have to step up. And we really believe that it's a time and an opportunity to step up and take control over what's happening in our supply chains. You know, not only the sourcing, but you know, what's happening to all this offcuts, what's happening to all this waste in the supply chain. When someone's done with a product, where does it go? You know, how do we reclaim the materials in those products and recycle them, rebuild them into building blocks that can create new, beautiful products? I think cruelty-free goes without saying. That's why we're here today. You know, we are a vegetarian fashion brand. That means that we want products that come without harm to animals. So we are really interested in this area represented in this room, which is, you know, an area that I think, you know, of the fashion brands in the world will probably have embraced most wholeheartedly. So, I mean, because we are a vegetarian brand and because we have not used leather from day one, innovation has always been part of our DNA, part of our core. It wasn't necessarily the kind of fun, sexy innovation that we're talking about here, but in 2001, when Stella set up the business, there was no one out there in the luxury space, I mean, not that there is really anyone now, but especially in 2001, trying to create beautiful, high-quality, luxury shoes and bags out of non-leather materials. So we, from the beginning, have had to create our own materials, had to work with our suppliers, had to build relationships with people in the supply chain, people throughout the world to create alternatives to the traditional materials that exist on the market for handbags and shoes and all different types of productions. And so we're open to this in a way that is very genuine, and it's why we're a part of this today, but it's also why we've set up partnerships with biotech companies around the world. So one of the main partnerships that we have is with a company called Bolt Threads, which one of the teams mentioned. Bolt is a Silicon Valley startup that is using biotech to create an animal-free, vegan, lab-grown silk protein. So using yeast, sugar, and water and DNA, they're able to create a protein that is extruded into a silk, something that for a brand like us is extremely exciting because we love the idea of being able to have a silk that is created in a lab, not only from the animal welfare point of view, but also because it gives us an opportunity, which, I mean, again, I think everyone here is very well aware of, to actually start to build in attributes from the beginning that we're interested in. You know, it starts to give us the opportunity to think about, what if from the beginning we were able to build a little bit of stretch into silk? Does that mean we wouldn't have to use elastane? That's amazing. I mean, not only from a sustainability and performance point of view, but it also then allows us to, when we're thinking about circularity, you know, remove the amount of different types of blends and fibers that are going into products, which is one of the key things that's stopping things from being able to be recycled right now, is the amount of blending that we're doing in the industry. So some of the pictures here are from our first few things we made with Bolt. The first garment we made was a yellow dress that was actually shown here at MoMA last year, something we're very, very proud of. It's a beautiful dress. I hadn't actually seen it myself until really just like a month ago when it finally made its way back to London, and I was completely blown away by it. Kind of glows. I mean, this fiber takes dye in a way that is completely unique. It's got this vibrancy to it that I've never seen another fiber have. I think it's amazing. And then we just really recently debuted a bag made out of the new material that they've launched called Milo. Milo is a leather-like material made out of the mycelium root structure of a mushroom. And it's beautiful, and it's something that, these types of materials are what we see the future of fashion looking like, completely different, completely engineered, being looked at from the beginning at how they can be built into sustainable supply chains for the future, not having to go backwards in time and say, how do we fix this mess we've made? But from the beginning, really saying, how do we build something that we can be proud of, that we know can sustain for the future? Another example of one of the companies that we're working with, and we've just done one project with, is a company called Color Effects. They're a company based out of the UK, and we made a dress with them, we dyed a dress with them, that's also being featured alongside the bag at the V&A right now. If you make it to London, if you happen to be in London, I highly recommend to go to the V&A. There's an exhibition there right now called Fashion from Nature, that's looking at the entire history of the fashion industry's relationship with nature from like the 1600s up until now. And so along with the bag, there's a dress there that we made dyed with Color Effects. Color Effects is a company that has found a way to engineer bacteria to dye materials. So more or less what they do is they engineer the bacteria to take on the properties of a dye, and in the process of doing this, in the process of transferring the color over to the cloth, they're able to make a huge amount of savings in water and energy. It's a small scale thing. We know that these things will take time to commercialize, but we're very excited about the possibility of what biotech can do for fashion. The other area of innovation that we're really excited about right now at Stella, outside of biotech, is really and simply just recycling. I'm really excited about recycling. Not that exciting to everyone else. It's the nature of being in this work. You get really excited about things like recycling. Like I said before, right now in fashion, only 1% of textiles is recycled back into textiles, and that's not something we're cool with. So we're really, really focused on finding technologies and startups that are enabling genuine recycling of textiles. So technologies that are finding a way to break down materials into their very, very basic building blocks and rebuild them. Because as a luxury business, one of the things that we're really concerned with, especially around recycling, is that the recycled product is a high enough quality that we can still consider it something that we'd be proud to sell to our customer base. So the recycling technologies that we're excited about, that we're working with, that we're starting to work with, are companies that allow us to do that, allow us to do recycling in a way that there's no difference in the quality of a virgin material. Oh, thank you. A virgin material and a recycled material. One of the ones that we've been working with for a while is a company called Econil. Econil makes a recycled nylon using nylon waste of fishing nets, carpet, garments, anything. And through their chemical recycling process, they're able to break down the nylon to the very basic building block and rebuild it back up. And those are the types of technologies when it comes to recycling that we're very excited about for the future. So, that's kind of a quick overview of some of the things that we're working on right now at Stella. I think that one of the important things for everyone here to know is that we do really take this seriously. We really do genuinely believe that the future of fashion is going to involve technology and biotech, that the next wave of materials hopefully won't only come from the field and the farm, but will also come from the lab. So I think that what I'd like to do, if you guys are up for it, is I'd love to actually open it up to questions to the room, because all the student groups that have to come up here have to have questions, and I feel like it's only fair that you guys get a chance to ask me some questions. So let me do that.
Got a question over here.
Hi, so my question's really specific to position I hold right now. I'm the Air Max material design intern at Nike right now, and they're having me focus on sustainability for footwear product. And I'm really starting to question how genuine their commitment is to it, and like how you can really like encourage and cause change in a company, because they do take my position seriously and like where I am in the company. But I just really want to figure out, like, if I'm there for a short amount of time, like how I can really push through and like really push this company to another level to like really be considering like all these materials as resources instead of just like kind of going the fly knit route where they're just like recycling like polyester and like, you know, making that their main focus right now, and like how you push them to that next level earlier rather than later.
That's a good question. So your question is how you can cause some change while you're there, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's a hard question.
It's just like when you make product at that massive a level, I feel like sustainability should be at the forefront from the get-go, and it bothers me that it's not.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, companies of any, you know, relatively large size are all facing a lot of the same problems, which is that we are still relying on systems that are in no way, shape, or form sustainable. You know, the entire supply chain and value chain that we need to produce products is wasteful. It's just absolutely wasteful. But I think that, you know, with a company like Nike or really any business, one of the best ways to get change taken seriously is to really look at the business case behind it. So, you know, I mean, like we are a company, but we're very unique in this way where we do things a lot of the time because we believe it's the right way to do them. But we also always have to have a business case behind what we're doing. You know, we don't only do things because it's out of the goodness of our heart. The business case doesn't always mean you have to make things the way that they've been made or you have to make the exact same amount of money, but you do have to look at, you know, especially for a company, a large company, you know, how does this make business sense? And I don't know if that's something in your position you're able to do, but I think that, you know, if you're looking at waste in the supply chain or really any issue, you know, making sure that you understand how it fits within the context of Nike, you know, how it could help them disrupt something, help them save money in some way. I think that's one good way to do it. And I also think it's really like a good way to start is just to pick something really small. You know, pick something small that is tackleable. Because a company, any company, again, us or Nike, you know, even a small company, there's going to be so many problems. You know, when I started at Stella, I was very overwhelmed by the amount of stuff, you know, we had to look at because, like I said, we're looking at so many different types of materials, so many different types of supply chains, and sometimes you just have to pick something and start there. And maybe there's a good reason, maybe there's a good opportunity to say, why don't we stop using this one thing, or why don't we start using this one thing, or, you know, how do we deal with this one very small piece of piece of waste in the supply chain. So I don't know if that's helpful. It's a really hard question, honestly, but I think that being there, you know, and wanting to be part of a big company and make change is also a huge step in the right direction, because these big companies do need people, you know, again, no matter what the company in the world is, to come in and really question things, to bring a fresh set of eyes and to say that these are the values that I have, these are the values that I think represent my generation, and this is what I think we need to be doing to be a business for the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi.
Hi.
I'll stand. We get to hear a lot about different biomaterials from, especially things like this. We get to hear about agros and about chitin and chitosan and keratin, and you get to hear also about the production of different pigments naturally, and about how you can actually try to break things down and recycle them. From the view of a commercial fashion line, what do you think is the place where you think biotechnology could make the most progress? Is it in the times of making new dyes, trying to come up with more synthetic ways of doing that? Is it making new materials? Or is it in the way of taking current fashion and trying to make it into something that's reusable or more eco-friendly? Where is the place where biotechnology should be picking up to actually support people and companies like Stella that's trying to work in this field?
I mean, for us, I think the area of biotech that excites us the most is around new protein. It's around alternatives to animal materials. That is really where we've focused our energy, because especially with something like leather or fur, where, you know, leather we know has a massive environmental impact. The environmental impact of leather is ridiculous. So if there's an opportunity, and I see some of our friends in that area are here today, but, you know, if there is an opportunity to find a way to create something that is leather-like, that is not synthetic, so not petroleum-based, that is a true protein without animal agricultural or the death of animals, like, to me, that's a huge, huge massively disruptive thing. Similarly, that's why we sponsored the Wool Prize here. If there's an opportunity to create something that can perform like wool, something that's biodegradable, that has all of the amazing properties of wool, I think biotech in that area is spectacular. I mean, the industry uses so much plastic. The fashion industry, the #1 used material is polyester by a lot. And we now know that polyester, well, we've always known polyester wasn't great for some reasons, but now with all the information that we have on the amount of microfibers being shed through washing, I think that in the material space, creating new types of materials that can perform and take the place of things like polyester that are not synthetic. If people don't use wool now, they use acrylic. If you had something that was high performance, really beautiful, giving you amazing design opportunities, but not having to be synthetic or animal-based, like that's the sweet spot for us at Stella.
Hi, thank you for your experience and expertise. My question has to do with dyeing. I think that that's probably one of the most difficult or most challengeable aspects in the fashion industry and in textiles. So how has Stella McCartney worked with sustainable dyeing, or is there any new insight into this? Thank you.
So again, I think with dyeing, there's a couple different ways to think about it. One of the things that we've done when we're looking at dyeing improvements, at least with natural materials, is looking at how do we ensure that the inputs, the chemical inputs, whether it's dyeing or finishing or cleaning, any type of chemical input process that's happening to the fiber, is done in a way that is safe and friendly so that that material could biodegrade at the end of its life. So when we're thinking about the circular economy and the material cycles that we have as a brand, we're thinking about the technical cycle, which allows things, in theory, hopefully to be cycled infinitely. So that's polyesters, nylons, metals, things like that. And you again need to look at the chemistry there, but for natural materials like cottons, things like that, it's looking at what are those input chemicals and how can we ensure that they're safe enough that at the end of this garment's life, if it's a cotton t-shirt, that it could safely be composted, it could safely return into the soil in a way that's healthy for the planet. So that's one of the things we've been doing. We've been working with Cradle to Cradle and their Fashion Positive initiative, and we certified some of our yarns using their methodology. It's very complicated, honestly. It took 2 years to do. It's my experience with most things is it takes about 2 years. But it's worth it in the long run because then you do have something, you have a key building block as a brand to be able to continue to use that material and use that technology. So we learned a lot from doing that. It's something we're continuing to look at. The chemistry issue for the industry is a genuinely huge issue. But for us, Cradle to Cradle's been a huge asset in addressing that.
Let's do one last question.
Thanks very much for your talk. I'm curious to know what sort of response you get from consumers when you introduce something like what I'm guessing is probably a biologically engineered protein like silk. If consumers are uncomfortable with that, or if they're willing to accept it because of the environmental benefits, that sort of thing.
So we haven't commercialized any of the biotech that we're using, so a disclaimer. But in the research we've done and through the marketing and kind of communication that we've done, my feeling is that there is not a discomfort around it in any significant way. The silk engineered, the silk protein that's been engineered, it's not really any different than a genetically modified carrot, to some degree. So I think that it depends. I think it's not a blanket answer. I think that there's a lot of different things in the biotech space, and I think people's level of comfort with that will vary depending on what the technology is, what the input is. Are you using human cells, are you using stem cells, or are you using yeast? I think yeast is pretty non-scary as a thing to people, and I think that's our experience with the silk, because it is primarily a yeast, sugar, and there is DNA, but it is not, you're not growing anything too crazy. It hasn't had to be that kind of conversation at this stage. But my hope is that the explanation around why we're doing this and the excitement around being able to have something new would outweigh kind of any discomfort. I mean, I think that, when nylon and rayon came on the market, people probably thought that was pretty weird, but, those are such normal materials to us now.
Thanks.
Hi, I have one more question, if you'd take it. So I noticed you guys have been collaborating with a lot of labs to develop your fibers and fabrics, but I was wondering if you guys have an in-house lab at all or would have ever considered that, because I feel there's a gap between the fashion industry and science. Like maybe in these labs they're not focusing on fashion. So if there was like a fashion science lab, I don't know if you guys have ever considered that.
We have not. We could, but my experience is that these companies that we work with do really want to work with us and are really interested in how their applications of their tech could be applied to fashion. It's a very mutual learning experience. However, we're learning a lot from them, they're learning a lot from us, and I think that that's what we've learned from working with them is it is a partnership. It's not just us going into a lab, of a company and saying, we want it to work for fashion. It's a very long conversation, and have to be very, very collaborative. We have to be very flexible. They have to be flexible to some degree. We have to be reasonably relaxed about timelines because the nature of evolving tech is that, everybody might think it might take a year, it might end up taking 3 years. Everyone might think it's going to take 3 years and it takes 3 months. And I think that kind of flexibility that we've developed while we work with these startups is what's made us a good partner for them. But to have that type of expertise in-house would be difficult because we're not just talking about one innovation. The types of innovations that we're looking at are so wide-reaching. Biotech being a big part of it, but even within the biotech space, we're talking about a lot of different types of things. So I think that trying to bring that in-house would be prohibitive to some degree.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that is all the time we have for. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Claire.
guys.
Round of applause.